Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. So I wanted to do a little bit more in-depth video showing the uses for the fixture table in setting up an axle truss or any bracketry you're doing, especially on something that has specific dimensions. The truss we're using right here, certain parts and pieces don't necessarily slot where we want them to, so we're going to move them. And I wanted to show you how utilizing the fixture table to make that happen really will make all the difference in the world for doing projects like these. So anyway, let me kind of give you a quick rundown of what we're building here. So this is a high-pinion Dana 44 front axle that you're going to find in your pre-1978 F100, F150s. It's got about 7 degrees of caster built into it from the factory with about a 4.5 degree pinion angle, 1/2 inch thick, 2 3/4 inch diameter axle tubes, super crazy strong. This has the weld-on wedges that you can see have been removed, so it gives you this whole entire axle tube to play with. Now in stock form, these are about 66 inches wide, depending on what outer spindle and hub setup you're running. And then what we're utilizing truss-wise is a Next Venture Motorsports. This is their TJ, XJ, MJ, and LJ full-size, full-width swap kit. So we are leaving this axle full width, obviously, and utilizing the Next Venture Motorsports truss. Now, the issue being we are not putting this axle in any of those vehicles. This is actually going in a WJ or a Grand Cherokee. And there's a few things that change with that. And I'm going to show you how changing those things becomes so much easier when you're utilizing the fixture table and the fixtures themselves. So those two things really that are changing are the center to center location of our coil spring buckets and our placement of the lower control arm mounts, how wide they are. So we'll show you here how we center the axle on the table, and then we can measure and build off of the table itself instead of just having to pull a tape from certain locations on the housing in hopes that you get it just right. The table and all the fixturing really helps with placement and all of that. So first things first, let's talk about how we have the axle just sitting on the table. How do we know that it's centered and that we can pull measurements off of the table? So we've come into the 4th hole in on both sides, so you can see it through this bracket. But 4th hole in, we're up on 2 fence blocks and a V block. Now, all this, the table, the fixturing, all of it. This is Fireball tool. I bought this table, I want to say it was almost 2 years ago now. I built some bumpers on it. I've built not a ton, but it is insanely helpful. And if you get a chance, look up Fireball tool. Their stuff is amazing. The tooling is great. It's actually very reasonably priced to get into. This table, I don't even know if he sells anymore. This is a 60-inch by 30-inch table. Crazy heavy duty. I believe it's 1.125" thick cast that is machined, and then all the holes put in. These are 3/4 inch holes on 2-inch centers. So you have a ton of options here for where you want to put fixtures and what you can do with these, and then of course all the additional pieces that you can add to these tables. So really great stuff. So as I'm going over this, just remember Fireball tool if you want to possibly look at getting into something like this. So we have the axle up off the table, and that's a big thing, getting what you're working on off the table surface a little bit. So again, 2 fence blocks, V block on both sides, same location from the edge of the table. Then what we did, measure from the flat edge of the back of the inner C to the outside edge of this V block and get that equidistant on both sides. So now we know, okay, this is centered. And the great thing becomes is when you're utilizing and putting your fixtures in at the same location on the opposite sides, now you can start figuring, okay, where is my center line of the axle itself? And the center of this is where this pin is at right here. So that marks your center of the axle, center of everything. And so we can build off of and measure off of this location. And the reason this becomes important is when you're moving parts and pieces like the coil buckets, like the lower control arm mounts, you want to have a place to measure from. And this is where the table comes in handy. So the first thing of moving these items is when you pull this out of the box, when you pull this truss out of the box, and I showed you in the last video tacking this thing together, but out of the box, this is set up for a TJ style suspension. It's slotted on these inside marks right here. That's where your coil buckets would normally go. Now, the customer I'm dealing with, he's been awesome to deal with, went out, gave me the measurements for what his suspension is, because the WJ is a little bit different. The axles are wider, and a lot of guys would go, well, it's just X wider overall, so just move everything overall that much. Instead, we're trying to be a little bit more, exact with it and take measurements and hit those numbers exactly. So where you start out with, where their location's at with your center to center, we're about 36.5 inches. Now, the customer went out, got me the measurements on his axle, and his center to center on the coil buckets came out to 38 inches. So obviously 38 minus 36.5, you got 1.5 inches overall. Divide that by 2 again, you move about 3/4 of an inch. So made our marks, got this to where we're roughly, 3/4 of an inch wider of where we want to be. And then obviously come and make your center line mark of where the coil bucket's actually going to go. Set this back up here. And of course, with doing all this, you could easily, I don't want to say easily, but you could set this up on a stand, have it, maybe tack the truss in place and pull a measurement from the center to the center and go, yep, that's pretty close. That's about where I want it. And that's fine. But with the fixture table, now that we can measure from a center point of the axle housing, we can set up this fixture at the distance we want, at the location that we want. And then what we're doing is, instead of pulling from the axle itself and going, well, I think that's close, or I think we're going to get right on, a lot of, what we used to do was, okay, from the inner C to here, you get that measurement and you try to mirror it side to side. This takes all that kind of guessing and back and forth out of the equation. So what we did is set up the fixture right here. I'll show you. We want to hit 38 inches. So there we go. We set the fixture up to 38 inches. Well, how do you know that it's centered? Well, here's our center line of the axle and everything. Well, as you can see, we've got 6 holes in between the center line and our fixture there. 6 holes between center line and the fixture there. So we know that these are both, yes, they're at 38 inches, and yes, these are actually equidistant from center line of the axle. So as long as we hit this mark right here, this outside edge of the fixture, we know that this is going to be in the proper location for exactly where we want it to be. Now, a lot of guys, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. I will tell you this. I just, a couple months back, was working on a Ford Ranger that had a TJ axle put in the front of it, straight axle swapped in the front, and they got their measurements close, but were off by about 1/2 inch. So this coil bucket was not in the proper location, and you should have seen the angle of these coil springs trying to work. They just, it looked disastrous, and it took a lot of time and effort and money to move those into the correct location. So again, getting this right matters a lot. So that's how you solve that problem. The other bit of this that I forgot to mention, and I'll turn this on too, is having this axle set up on the V-blocks and everything. We also have these shims in the back, 2 fence blocks and a couple shims out of the Fireball shim kit and these clamps holding this down. We have this axle set, table's been leveled. We have the axle set at 7 degrees of caster. So this is another great thing, is you can set your housing up to exactly what you want on the table and build all the bracketry at the correct degree angle that you're looking for. Again, just makes it so much easier. You're not having to kind of guess and check and go over things multiple times. You can do it once and get it right on the money. So the last thing that we kind of had to mess with was the location of our lower control arm mounts. Now, this kit out of the box, I don't care whether you're actually using it for a TJ style suspension or not, they do not really give you a proper location to put these lower control arm mounts. It's really not in any of the instructions or descriptions. So the idea being, get everything up top done, leave this clear, roll this axle under your Jeep, hook up your lower control arm mounts, put it up in place, and then, you know, setting all your angles and whatnot. Yeah, you can do that, and that's fine. But again, this way right here just makes it so much easier when you're dealing with proper dimensions. And I'll show you how we're doing that. So again, just like on the coil buckets, customer went out and I said, hey, what an easy place to measure off of is this inside edge of the outer flange of your lower control arm mounts. Measure from the inside edge of this to the inside edge of this and get me that number. And we came up with 36 inches right on the money. So if I can keep my tape measure hooked there, we set a fixture up and hit it right at 36 inches. And you're going, well, again, and we're using these tooth blocks here, and I'll show you how these work. So you unscrew this locking pin, and what you can do is you can actually take this fixture block, and as you can see now, we've moved it. And you have this measuring device right here. So you can actually take this and move it about a 1/16th at a time or an 1/8, depending on which tooth you have. But this tooth block right there stays. And you see this pin keeps this back hole in line. And with this locking bolt loose, you can move this to any dimension you want. And so what we have it set up on both sides is 1 inch back, okay? And that gives us our proper dimension of 36 inches. Now, and again, what you're gonna go just like we did in the front, well, how do you know that you're centered? Okay, well, right here, we have this clamp in our centered hole location. And what we can do is go, okay, well, pretty simple. You can measure this direction and come up with like 8 5/16 from the edge of that, okay? You can do it on the other side and go, yeah, it's close. But another great thing is, if you're in the same bolt hole right here. So this is center line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this back pin is in the 6th hole from the center. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we know that this is at the same location. And with our measuring device actually on the tooth block, same side to side, you go, well, hey, this is in the right location, is it not? Well, I believe so, but here's another way to measure. Put a fence block in right at the same location right here where the other two are holding the axle housing up, and just run a easy measurement right here. 4.5 inches. Come over to this side. Again, everything in the same location, right at 4.5 inches. So not only do we know that the spacing here to here, 36, is exactly what we want, and as you can see, it just clips the inside edge of this lower control arm bracket. We know that this is in the correct location. Then you're gonna say, well, how do you adjust for height? Well, you're gonna have to probably take some measurements off another housing, which I have, to figure out from the bottom, from the top of the bottom plate to the center hole right here, figure out that distance. Now we're pretty darn close to touching, and I believe that is the correct orientation, where this is pretty much supposed to be touching or almost touching this shock mount right here. But what we've done is utilize fence block and some of our shims to keep this in the right location. The way these are cut, they do orientate in the right angle, and then you can just set this up in place, move it over, and as you can see, we've already tacked it, but now we know that this is in the right location side to side. The other thing that makes this so great is this may be the only axle that I ever build like this, possibly. It's a Grand Cherokee, high-pinion 44 front. We're also going to be doing a 9-inch rear. I'll be doing a video about that setup here coming up. But the great thing about this is, yes, this may be a one-off build, but once you get everything located, tacked in place, maybe you just pull it off this table and to fully weld it. The great thing becomes is if I leave all the fixtures set up how they are and take a couple pictures of it and or maybe draw out a little bit of a diagram to show where everything's at and the proper spacing of where everything is, I could take another axle housing, get the wedges cut off, throw it up here, utilize the same axle truss, and just set all the fixturing in the same location, drop the housing on, and everything is gonna be exactly the same as how I built this housing with all the dimensions being correct. So that's what utilizing a fixture table can do for you and make life so much easier. Now, I'm not saying you have to go with Fireball tool. There's a lot of companies out there. You can get Harbor Freight fixture tables. I have another fixture table over here. This is I think these are less than 300 bucks on Amazon. This is, I believe, Clutch Tools. I'll put a link in the description. But yeah, you can get these for, now this is 3 foot by 2 foot. It's very light duty, just a 1/4 inch plate for the top. So be careful about really wrenching down on things. But after utilizing a fixture table to do all these setups, it makes things insanely simpler, easier, repeatable. And that's a big thing for me is, hey, down the road, I could build something else just like this and hit everything right on the money because it's set up with the fixturing, or again, what has been called a jig for, you know, millennia pretty much. So hopefully you guys like this. Oh, one last thing. When you're dealing with these brackets as well, you get these coil buckets set in place. This top plate has a dimension that they kind of want it at, where the back of it is close to the back edge. We can actually adjust that. Same thing, tooth block, loosen this up, move it in and out 1/16 of an inch. So not only is this outside edge right here giving us our center to center dimension, but this back edge right here that this plate is butted up with actually gets us our dimension, moving it in and out. So again, we're doing multiple things at one time with all the fixtures to make this much, much easier. So anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Like, share, subscribe. I also put on the main page for the YouTube guys, or for you guys that follow me on YouTube, there is a donate link. It does take me time to come up with these ideas and make these videos and put this information out there for you guys. So yeah, if you're willing to kick in a few bucks to keep these videos going, that would be great. You know, I do all this stuff out of my own garage. It's me. I'm a one-man band with doing this. I'm lucky enough to have a wife that helps me with kind of the tech side of things. But yeah, if you guys can support, great. Because I would like to do a lot more informational videos on other projects we have going on down the road too. So to keep this stuff going, any help is greatly appreciated. You guys have been awesome, and hoping to keep this channel growing and keep this information flowing. So I really appreciate you guys sticking with it, and hopefully you enjoy these, and we will catch you on the next one.